This is the Bitcoin Made Simple podcast. Here's your host, Corey Tusick.
This is the Bitcoin Made Simple podcast. I'm your host, Corey Tusick. On today's episode, I speak with Mike Peterson. He is in charge of the Bitcoin Beach down in El Zante, El Salvador. If you don't know what Bitcoin Beach is, they basically have made it a circular economy down there. And it's really helping lift people out of poverty. And so we get into that with Mike. We talked about, how they were able to implement it, and how it's helping people improve their lives. And also, we also got, Mike made me a little misty eyed as well, because, it's just really heartwarming to hear, how much Bitcoin is helping the people down in El Salvador. And hopefully that can be replicated around the world. So yeah, hope you enjoy the show. If you want to reach out to me, email is bitcoinmadesimplepodcast@gmail.com and on Twitter @BitcoinSimply. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy the show. So you're back in LA right now?
Yeah, California? San Diego area. So
okay, San Diego
come
area.
Back and take care of a few things for a couple weeks, and then I'll be back down there. So
what a shame. It's a terrible place to go, San Diego.
Yes, it's a horrible place.
I have a friend that lives there. He moved there from Pittsburgh, and then he came back to Pittsburgh for like 6 months, and then it got to winter time. He was like, nope, and he just went back. He was like, I can't do this. I'm going back to San Diego. It's just gorgeous.
It does make it a little challenging though, to move or do anything else in life, because you get a little spoiled. I grew up here and I went to college in Santa Barbara, and I'd say Santa Barbara is even nicer than San Diego. So anywhere else in the world is kind of tough to compare. But actually, El Salvador or in El Zante is one of the few places that I actually like the weather and the environment more than San Diego. So
nice. So, well, Mike, thanks for coming on. Is it Mike or Michael? I've heard
both.
So. Okay. Well, I appreciate you coming on and talking about Bitcoin Beach and everything. I'm a big beach person, and I obviously love Bitcoin. So whenever I found Bitcoin Beach, I was like, oh my God, I got to go there as soon as this pandemic's over. So how did the whole process start? I mean, I've kind of heard you, I'm sure anybody that's listening has heard you talk about, the anonymous, donor that gave you money or gave you Bitcoin to start a circular economy. But I want to kind of get into your vision of Bitcoin and what got you into Bitcoin. And is that what you kind of see playing out? Like your vision for Bitcoin is what you're doing in Bitcoin Beach?
Sure. So initially I came into Bitcoin more from the economic systems and monetary policy side. I was an economics major, and I've always been kind of fascinated about, the different economic systems that are out there and why some seem to generate wealth and prosperity and health, and others seem to kind of keep people locked in cycles of poverty. And I also have, a libertarian bent and have some concerns that, you look historically, and it seems like as societies age, they tend to become more bureaucratic, and it tends to cause more issues over time. And then they often implode and the cycle starts over again. And so we're getting a little long in the tooth here in the US. And so when I heard about Bitcoin and kind of the way it divorces money and control of money from the state, I was, very fascinated by that, and, followed it from very early times. I don't know, 2011, 2012, I don't remember exactly. I'm definitely not a tech person. And so my early endeavors to try to buy Bitcoin, I was rebuffed and realized I had no idea even how to how to buy it, how to hold it, any of that. And so I just kind of kept keeping an eye on it. And obviously the technology has come along, and for neophytes like me that can't figure basic tech stuff out, it's pretty easy now. And so that's kind of the more historic how I got
from
into
that angle of
and then also having been living in El Salvador for a number of years and working in the community there, I also realized just how segmented the financial system is in the world and how many people just don't have the ability to send money from one person to another. They don't have access to bank accounts. They don't have all the payment rails that we kind of take for granted in the US. And I found even in El Salvador, like when we were trying to buy a car or buy property, it was this major hurdle just to get money into the country. And a lot of times the easiest way was to just visit the ATM like every day for a month and try to, accumulate enough cash out of my accounts in the US. It was actually faster and cheaper than trying to get it down in some other means. And so, seeing that there's a system out there that kind of bypasses all of that and allows me now, I could send, $100,000 in value, in Bitcoin to somebody in, anywhere in the world, in Argentina, and buy a property there, where 5 years ago, when Bitcoin was less accepted, you just couldn't do that. And to try to get money into the banking system there might take you months. And so that's kind of where I came into it, and just seeing how the wealthy tend to benefit the most from the status quo and from the existing banking structure.
Yep.
And the poor pay the highest fees, both percentage wise, but also in like real dollar terms. I mean, they might spend $10 for a transaction, where for me, I can do it for free, or a lot of times I'll get points back or some other, actually better than free type advantage, where, 90% of the people in the world don't have that. And so for them to be able to exist on the same playing field as the rest of us, to be able to send stuff over the Lightning Network basically for free, for them, not to have institutions be able to tell them that they're not qualified to have an account, and for them also be able to hold their currency, hold their wealth in a currency that's appreciating over time versus depreciating. It really levels the playing field for the poor.
Yeah. And, it's one of those things that outside of the US and probably a lot of the, developed countries, you don't realize how difficult that is to get payment, or make payments. Just an example that the first kind of time I really came across it was, there was a movie that we were distributing in, it's a Pakistani film, and it's literally going to be the biggest movie in the history of Pakistan. And it's this, I mean, COVID, shutting down theaters is basically why it's not out now. But we were exploring digital options, and Netflix was really interested, but Netflix does not have the ability to get people in Pakistan to pay for Netflix. So that's why it's not there. It's not that there's a lack of demand or anything. It's, you have to, I think they have to pay through their mobile service or something like that. And I don't know if that's like something like similar down in like El Salvador and other countries like that you've seen, like where I think they have to like preload money they have to go to their mobile store, preload money onto their cell phone plan, and then pay for subscriptions through their cell phone plan. And it's like really archaic. Is that similar to El Salvador? Or is it?
Yeah, I think you see kind of workarounds like that in a lot of the developing world, where people will trade phone credits, or they'll actually be able to transact through the phone companies. Will have some kind of rudimentary financial system kind of built in, or they'll kind of bypass the system altogether and trade in Amazon gift cards or things like that that they can send online. There is in El Salvador, there's not a big kind of mobile to mobile, and there's definitely not a peer-to-peer kind of network yet, although there's a number of promising fintechs that are kind of indigenous to El Salvador that are springing up. But right now, people who have bank accounts do have some access to mobile banking. They can pay their bills online. They can do those type of things. But, for probably 80% of the people, that's not an option for them. And so what Bitcoin does, it allows everybody to have that option to opt into the mobile system. Right now, we're working on rolling out kind of community-wide Wi-Fi in one of our communities. And one of the challenges in working with the internet provider they've said they've had is the majority of the people don't have bank accounts. And so for them to collect payment is super difficult and expensive. For them to have a physical location where people can come pay in cash, it's inconvenient and it costs money. You got to have a location, you got to have a person staffing it. And so we're going to adapt that so that they'll be able to pay in Lightning. And all of a sudden, it's a whole new world for them. Instead of them having to take the bus somewhere and wait in line to pay in person, now they can just transact right from their wallet and send a Lightning payment in 5 seconds, and it's done. So it's
That's
really
so exciting.
equalizing things.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Like that just makes me like, I'm really excited to see what's going to come out of that, with because like I can remember when the internet came on, and it was like opened up this world of like, whoa, like there's all this knowledge, there's all this stuff that you can get. Yeah, like you said, it's going to level the playing field. So down there, so you guys have Strike enabled down there, and I saw Jack Mallers was down there with you guys over the last couple of weeks. Was there some developments there that you guys were implementing some new things? I mean, it's been working there for a while, right?
So Strike has just been opened up to users in El Salvador just in the last 2 weeks. We were doing some beta tests with some people we had whitelisted to kind of be trials, but for Strike, El Salvador is actually the first place outside of the U.S. that they've launched. And so
Awesome.
the reason we're excited about that, working with Strike on this, is for remittances. The El Salvadorian economy is very dependent on remittances. Unfortunately, we hope over time that will change as the Bitcoin kind of takes hold in El Salvador and makes it a productive environment for companies to move to. But for now, the economy is very dependent on money coming back from people working in the US or in Europe. And a large portion of those funds that are sent are kind of siphoned away in fees and other inefficiencies in the system. And so what we're excited about with Strike is that now somebody can send $10 to their mom, in El Salvador from Los Angeles, from their own living room. They can just open up their Strike app, and it's already connected to their bank account, and they send $10 down in Lightning over the Bitcoin rails, and their mom in El Zante receives it as Bitcoin, and then can go down to the store and buy milk or tortillas or whatever she needs, and all that can happen in 5 minutes instead of it taking 5 days for her to wait for those funds to get there. So with Strike, I really think they are going to be a disruptive company and technology that's going to kind of upend this antiquated remittance system that's, is responsible for billions, hundreds of billions of dollars moving around the world right now. I think this whole system is going to be upended.
Yeah, and like you said, the system makes the poor poorer and the rich richer. And I think I've heard Jack Mallers talk about, I don't know if he was talking about El Salvador in particular, but like the dangers of just going to Western Union and like gangs sitting outside and, basically saying like, hey, either give us, 10% or we're going to rough you up. That eliminates that.
I think that's a little bit exaggerated, but there's definitely danger anytime you're carrying large amounts of cash or something on the bus and those
anywhere.
Sorts of things.
Oh
yeah, whether you're in the U.S. or El Salvador or anywhere, it's nobody recommends that you stick $3,000 in your pocket and then get on the public bus anywhere. So it's definitely a concern.
Yeah, except for the only person that didn't. I was in a Panera bathroom and with my son, and I come walking out and there's this guy like taking pictures with like stacks of cash. I was like, I don't know if it was like in the back of his rap video, but I'm like, why is he doing like a video? Or like, I don't know why that was in a bathroom that had to happen, but it was bizarre, and he apparently didn't think it was a big deal. But yeah, well, one thing I'm curious about too, because whenever I hear like they're like somebody sending money to their mother in El Zante, and my initial thought before thinking about Bitcoin being a circular economy there is like, okay, well, now you have to educate the mother on how to transfer that Bitcoin into local currency and all those different steps. So what's it like with the circular economy there, where, I mean, like you said, she can just go and use it. She doesn't have to transfer it.
That's the great thing. We've worked with a Lightning wallet company called Galloy Money, and they have developed a really easy to use, anybody can use it, from a 3-year-old to a 93-year-old Lightning wallet, that basically all the complexities of Lightning is it happens behind the scenes. And so they're able to actually just with a username send money to a store. They can also tap on an icon in the map that shows the locations of all the businesses that are accepting Bitcoin, and they can send it right from in the map. For the store's perspective, it happens much quicker than cash, because they don't have to create a Lightning invoice, as long as they're both using the same wallet. If somebody's using a different wallet, which is fine, we encourage many wallets to be used, then they just create a Lightning invoice. But for the majority of the people in town, it's easier just to use this system where they can, everybody can send based on usernames. And so it happens quicker than cash. They don't have to worry about having change. They don't have to worry about having, cash that at night at the end of the day. And so it's really kind of taken that whole chicken and the egg thing away, because now there's no longer really a need for most people to convert to the US dollar. Of course, there will always be some things that they need to be able to do that for, but those things become less and less. We just recently developed a partnership with a payments network called Punta Express. And through that, now people can pay their electricity bill, they can pay their kids' college tuition, they can pay their car insurance, they can pay, pretty much anything, their credit card bills. And so the need to go to the dollar just becomes less and less the further this project goes on. And we're only a year and a half in, so it's pretty remarkable how quickly the need to go to the dollar has gone away. Mm-hmm. But, there will always be some times where people need to do that. And we have a partnership with Athena Bitcoin. They have a Bitcoin ATM in the community that people use. And there's also a ton of people that come out of the capital city that want to buy Bitcoin. And there's no great way for them to do it in El Salvador right now. So there's a lot of peer-to-peer that happens face-to-face with, doctors or lawyers or other professionals that want to start stacking sats. And so they'll come and start buying from the people that are earning sats but need to convert part of it.
Mm-hmm. And there's a big debate in the Bitcoin community, of is Bitcoin a currency or is it a store of value? And there's a multitude of reasons why you can argue either side. Where do you? I think I have a feeling where you'll probably land on that side, or what side you land on with that. But what do you see as Bitcoin versus a currency versus a store of value? With what are you seeing firsthand down in El Salvador?
I think it's both. I really don't understand the kind of either or mentality that we see a lot in the Bitcoin world. I would understand it more if we didn't have second layer protocols like Lightning. And I know a lot of people are still kind of unfamiliar with Lightning or haven't tried to use it recently. Maybe they tried it in the early days when it was still, extremely challenging to use, and they kind of gave up on it. But with the Lightning Network now, you have a currency that's easier to use than dollars. It moves faster. You don't have any of the downsides of using dollars, of needing to have change, of needing to store it, of only being able to use it in one particular type of wallet. Like if you're using like a PayPal or something like that, you can now use Lightning that can be used in, dozens of different wallets, transacted faster than anything. But the key is you're also holding all your wealth in a currency that's appreciating over time. So in this day and age, I don't understand why anybody would want to hold any of their wealth in dollars. I mean,
yeah,
I want to have everything that I can in Bitcoin. So the fact that I can spend that Bitcoin when I need to is a huge value add. And it also makes you kind of really think long and hard about how you're spending money, because when you're spending a precious resource like Bitcoin, you're going to be much more careful of how you're using it than if you're spending dollars. And so my response to the people that say, oh, you shouldn't spend your Bitcoin is, why do you have any dollars? Why don't you just have it all in Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting like dangerously close to that, where like I'm basically putting like everything except for what I need in like the foreseeable future in Bitcoin, because Yeah, it was funny. Even my future brother-in-law's bachelor party was this weekend. We were in a casino, and I was sitting there playing blackjack and like holding the chips, and I was like, I started thinking about what it was worth in Bitcoin, and I was like, don't do that, because it's so much easier to spend it if it's, if it's cash. So that's fascinating. Yeah, and I agree with you, because once people, I think I was just a store of value person and didn't see, I was like, okay, there's going to be a lot of work to make this a payment system. And once I wrapped my head around Lightning, which I still don't, I'm nowhere near, fully understanding it and all the developments. That's whenever I saw, and something that could be possible for payments, and was really excited to see that you guys were growing it down in El Salvador. What's the penetration like in El Zonte right now? How many people, or percentage of people are using Bitcoin in the circular economy?
I would say probably 90% of the families there are using Bitcoin. Now, that may be, just the head of the household of a family of six, or that may be three people within the family, depending on how many people have smartphones in the family. But I
Hmm.
would say that definitely the vast, vast majority of families there are using it, in some fashion. For some, it might only be, more as a savings vehicle, but for probably at least half of them, it's how they transact daily life. And so, like you were mentioned before on the spending versus store of value aspect, we've seen a huge sea change just in the culture of savings in El Zonte, where before there wasn't really a savings culture. It was more of a spending culture. You kind of, as soon as you got money, you spent it, which is understandable because most people are living kind of hand to mouth, and the average salary is $300 to $400 a month. And so for many of them, it was challenging to save. But we've found when they start earning in Bitcoin and saving in Bitcoin, they find a way to save because they're just much more careful about how they use their money, because they think, they realize, hey, if I spend this on this kind of eating out tonight, this $5, like it could be worth $20, a year from now. And so I'd rather kind of eat simpler tonight and save this money for the future. And so we think because of that, you're going to see just a huge increase in the asset base that they have to open businesses, to buy properties, all those sorts of things. And that's how you break a cycle of poverty.
Yeah, I think that is going to be, and I'm sure this is what your hope is to make this the basically case study for the rest of the underdeveloped world. Is that, somebody had asked a question of, are you guys developing, or is there going to be a playbook like Michael Saylor's playbook for for the CEOs to be able to convert their treasuries to Bitcoin? Do you think there'd ever be like a Citadel or circular economy playbook that you guys can show to other communities around the world, whether it be a bunch of plebs in the middle of Iowa that want to start their own Citadel, or somebody in Africa, or South America, you name it.
Yeah, no, we're definitely an open book. We're working with a project in Peru right now that's kind of trying to replicate what we're doing at Bitcoin Beach. We're in talks with some people that operate with Venezuelan refugees, kind of on the border with Colombia, and we do need to kind of sit down and document more stuff and kind of make it easier to pass on. I mean, a lot of this has just been, we're learning as we go. And so I definitely wouldn't say that we're experts or that we, have it all dialed in. One of the things that has really allowed us to kind of push the limits and do these things has been having some donor money behind it that's been willing to be patient and kind of build these long-term things. And I think just kind of like any startup company or any type of startup, in the initial stages, you're going to have some burn that you're going to have to go through. You're going to have some funds that you ingest in. But our long-term vision is, hopefully after 3 to 4 years, that won't be needed anymore, and that it'll have developed to a significant level where it kind of just feeds on itself. And so that's why right now we're focused on bringing in Bitcoin-related jobs. Strike has actually hired a number of people within the community. We're working with another company in the crypto space, in Given. and even some other people outside the Bitcoin space that want to hire employees that understand Bitcoin and be able to pay them in Bitcoin, but have them do other technical things. And so that's kind of our long-term goal. And so we definitely are open with anybody, but I feel like we're maybe 1/10 along the way to where we need to be. So I think it would be a little presumptuous for us to, say we have a playbook at this point, but we're definitely willing to share, what we've learned, what we've done wrong, what we've seen the work with anybody who's interested.
Mm-hmm. And where at in Peru did you? Is it a specific town in Peru or?
So it's an organization that has operations in both Lima and Cusco. And so, and they've been doing some initial things, more with kind of relief aid, but they're trying to move in the same direction as us, where people are being paid in Bitcoin, where you're creating kind of more of a sustainable economy, where people are earning Bitcoin and then spending Bitcoin at the local stores and it going in that route. But right now they're in the early stages of just trying to seed that.
Mm-hmm. That's what I don't know if you're familiar with. There's a Chimbote, Peru. My dad went on a mission trip there a handful of years ago, and Pittsburgh has like a mission connection to Chimbote, Peru. But I mean, he just said it's like the people are the nicest people in the world. But he said it's just you can't even describe the poverty that they're living in. To the point where they're basically like squatting on land and just hoping to live there, and they erect like a very very thin walls, and it's just it's hard to imagine from us in the United States seeing like how people live that way, and it's hopefully that's something that can flip there. And
yeah, we've seen that in El Salvador. It's a similar environment. You have people that are living in 10 shacks with a dirt floor, but just by them having access to a network that they can save in and an appreciating currency, for them to be also just the hope that Bitcoin can bring, that there is
that life can get better,
saving and looking forward. It encourages them to get more education. It encourages them to be forward thinking about things. And we've seen people in the short time we've been up and operating, we've seen dozens of people kind of work their way out of poverty.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So one of the people asked about, and they're not familiar with El Salvador, so it could sound really ignorant. And you did reply on the tweet, but what's the, safety like there? I mean, is it like I've never been to El Salvador, so I don't, know what to compare it to. But I mean, I will always tell people that it's dangerous to be in London or France, or the United States. It's dangerous everywhere, but I'm sure people are fearful of that. So is what's safety like there, and what's the town like for visiting?
Sure. So safety is always kind of a question people ask us about. El Salvador does have a violent history, and they went through a civil war just a few decades ago. And coming out of the civil war, the gangs really took power there, and you had a really big gang presence. And for a number of years, El Salvador had the highest murder rate in the world. But it's unique, and even during that time, we've been there for 16 years, so we've lived through a lot of that. And as foreigners, you face very little danger. I mean, unfortunately for the local people, historically, it's been a different situation. But we've seen even that really change in the last couple of years. The gang violence has gone down significantly, and it's becoming less and less a problem. The current governmental administration is doing a good job with that, and they're pushing economic opportunity, and we're hoping that they'll adopt Bitcoin and use that to be something that opens their economy even further. But really, for foreigners, you face almost zero risk. I mean, I haven't known a single foreigner in the 16 years we've been down there that's had anything happen to them. I mean, maybe somebody got their phone stolen that they left on the beach and walked away from, or something like that, mm-hmm. Same thing that would happen in California.
Oh yeah.
But as far as like risks, I raised my kids there. I now have a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old, and
So they've spent their whole lives there.
yeah. So it's I think the risk thing, I understand if people just read the news, that's what they get. But literally, once people get to El Zonte, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was worried at all. Like, that's the last thing on their mind. The town of El Zonte is just an amazing, beautiful beach surf town. Has an amazing mix of cultures. You have a lot of foreign tourists. You have a lot of Salvadoran tourists that come in out of the capital city. And then you have the local population that they mix in a unique way that you don't see in a lot of places. A lot of places where expats tend to gather, it becomes kind of like an expat ghetto, and you have like them living in one place and the locals living in another place. You have a lot less of that in El Zonte. You have a real kind of fluid mix within the community. The people are super hardworking, super friendly. There's tons of people that come through and just plan on staying like a night or two. And, 2 years later, they're still living in El Zonte. It's just one of those kind of magical places.
Yeah, that's also it's like the original Citadel, and then you inject Bitcoin into it and it can change everything.
Definitely.
What I'm curious, with one of the things I always hate about, poverty and the hopelessness, and something that we've really seen during the COVID pandemic of, just, driving depression and making people feel hopeless, because it's not, I mean, you can be depressed about a lot of things, but I always say when you take hope out, that's what really, you feel like you have nothing, and that can really drive depression. So I'm curious, has there been like a mental health change just in general? I mean, I know you're not a like therapist, and keeping track, but is it getting better, just from having Bitcoin and people having hope and, seeing a chance to prosper?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, we believe Bitcoin plays a big role in that. I mean, we're kind of focused on a number of different roles. Like we are a Christian organization at heart, and so we kind of focus on the spiritual life of people, also along with the economic lives. And so we see kind of those two together, them really feeling like there's a hope in the future, that they don't have to leave to the U.S. A lot of them have come out of broken homes because their parents or their father had to leave to go to the U.S. A lot of times when that happens, they meet somebody else in the U.S. and the families wind up fracturing. And so something the father originally did to try to benefit the family winds up causing long-term kind of breakup. And you see kind of the spiral effect of that, where then the kids join the gang because the dad's not there and they feel like there's no economic opportunity for them, or they eventually leave for the US also and kind of repeat that cycle. And so what we see with Bitcoin is, for the first time ever, they feel like they are leading the charge, that they're leading the world in this new technology, that they're learning skills that other people in the world want to come to them and learn from. They're no longer thinking about sneaking into the US illegally and getting some dead-end job. They're thinking about how can they work for Strike or one of these other leading edge kind of internet or Bitcoin operations that are looking to move to El Zonte now. And so that's something that we definitely underestimated. We didn't realize the impact of hope, like you're talking about. I think we underappreciated just how big of a driver and a motivator that is in life. And that before, a lot of people had just kind of given up, or had just kind of, thought, well, this is my lot in life, and so I'm not going to try to achieve anymore. And now we're seeing this kind of community spirit where they want to be giving back to the community. They want to be serving as mentors for the kids that are younger than them. They want to be acquiring job skills, English, computer skills, all these different things that there was just no motivation for that before. And really that comes from them feeling like Bitcoin offers them a way out of the traditional kind of cycle of just leaving for the US and working in a dead-end job.
Yeah. So in a way, Bitcoin starts with making your time horizon, your time preference, lengthen and you look into the future, and then that kind of spills out. It sounds like it's spilling over into like the rest of their lives.
Definitely. I mean, we're seeing, I would say that the rate that people are joining the gangs is like 10% of what it was even 2 years ago.
Wow.
We're able to catch those youth, those kind of vulnerable times. And now they feel like, before it was like, well, why not join the gang? I don't have any other route. I can make some money. People will respect me if I join the gang. Now they feel like, no, I want to learn English. I want to go on to university. I want to work for one of these Bitcoin related companies with a good paying job where I can make twice as much as my parents could ever make. I can be working in a environment that's not hard on my body, like digging in a field all day. They can provide for their kids and not have to leave and spend, decades away from their kids while they're growing up just to support them. And so we're seeing kind of across the board, we're seeing people for the first time in their lives kind of commit to marriage and marrying and creating kind of more nuclear families, where in the past you just saw a lot of just single mothers and people growing up without their dads. And so we're really seeing a transformation kind of across the spectrum.
Wow, that's awesome.
Sorry, I get a little emotional when I talk about it, but it's
no,
been really
awesome.
cool to see.
That's awesome. I mean, you're like inspiring me right now to like, I mean, I literally am sitting here thinking, I had already mentioned to you, I think about how, for the documentary I'm doing, I want to come down to check out the community. But just like hearing that, I'm thinking to myself, like, oh, there's got to be a way that our company, our streaming platform can, like bring down equipment, teach kids how to, create programs and start getting their creative side going, and letting them do that. And that's just like, I mean, I'm literally like, it's like leaping out of me. It's like one of the things my wife always goes, like, I get like super excited and I'm like, all right, let's do this. We're going to do it. But it's just like, that's awesome because we also then we'll talk about this afterwards. I don't want to make a whole podcast about this idea, but I'm just like, oh man, because then kids could start earning money, that grown-ups do. I mean, they could start earning money from it and just, you change the world. I mean, you mentioned it started as a Christian organization, and that's, I mean, obviously I said my dad did mission work and stuff. So I'm very in line with that, but like, it's like that dropping the pebble in the water, and the ripple effect that you see go across the entire town, and hopefully it can go into the rest of the community. Is the government, what's the local government and the national federal government and stuff, are they involved at all with it, or is it just a straight organization that you're doing on your own and no government involvement?
So we've made a real effort to engage the government, and we have partnered with them on some things in an unofficial kind of way. We're not getting government support there, but we felt like it was very important that they knew kind of what our goals were and what we were about. And, a lot of times Bitcoin comes with a lot of baggage. People, think of buying drugs or money laundering or all these different things. And so we wanted to be very clear that, hey, this is a community impact project. This is something to help lift people out of poverty, to give people on the lowest rungs of the economic ladder the resources and the potential to better their lives. And so we've actually had the Department of Education come down and visit our operations last week, and they want to look at how they can kind of replicate our community-based efforts. We have a central building where we have like our English classes and our computer classes and all of those things called Hope House. And so they came and toured Hope House, and they learned about the different programs that we're doing. We have, along with the English and the computer classes, we have surf classes to get people kind of physically active and out there learning how to surf. We have a lifeguard program that we've rolled out along about a 50-mile stretch of the country, where we have professional lifeguards now that are guarding the beaches, that have probably been responsible for saving at least 50 lives at this point, people that probably would have died otherwise.
Wow.
All these lifeguards are being paid in Bitcoin. And so we've engaged with we met with the Ministry of Tourism to talk about this program and how we can kind of build the tourism infrastructure there. And our goal is we've developed this lifeguard program, and we're hoping the government will eventually absorb it. We can't fund it forever, but our idea is, hey, let's get things up and running and show how they can work, and then invite partners in. We've also have met with the government, with the president's economic minister, and explain to her just the potential that El Salvador has if it really embraces Bitcoin. El Salvador uses the US dollar, so they have nothing to be fearful of Bitcoin competing with their own currency. And if they were to adopt Bitcoin as an official currency alongside the dollar, they'd have tons of companies that would move in and bring high-paying jobs. I mean, we're already starting to see that happening. But if they really embraced it, they could be the microsystems of countries. And so, or microstrategy, sorry, of countries. And so we're pushing on them right now to really consider embracing Bitcoin as an official currency. We've also been working with their CIFCO, which is their kind of trade arm of the government. And they want to plan on doing a Bitcoin and crypto-focused trade show in El Salvador in the next year and kind of highlight what's happening in the region. And so we feel very positive on the government side that they'll be great partners longer term.
Yeah, that's something I've been thinking for a while of getting, if I'm one of those countries that, wants to establish itself in the world economy and raise its level as far as a world power, I'd be all in adopting Bitcoin. I think, was there a tweet that you just shared or something about, or liked or something about somebody who's going to be the first country that becomes fully adopts Bitcoin as a standard, and I think you pointed at El Salvador, like, come on, let's do this.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's definitely it's a long shot, but we're pushing on the government here for them to realize the opportunity that's in front of them. Whoever's the first is going to hold that, for the rest of history. They'll have the companies looking to move there. They'll hold that kind of title forever. And so who's going to be the first mover on that? And once one country goes, there'll be all kinds that will follow, but the advantage is going to go to the first mover. And we really think El Salvador is in position to be that first mover.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they've already have it there with you guys. They have the model to follow. And it's just kind of one of those things that as that seed goes, I mean, suddenly, or what is it? What's the slowly then suddenly or whatever, where all of a sudden, once one of them goes, it's going to be boom, 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 right down the line. So what,
for countries like El Salvador, there's literally no downside. I mean, it's all upside. And so they're not players right now in the tech space or the crypto space, but one governmental decree could change that overnight. And so we're really hoping that they kind of see that opportunity that they have to lead the world forward. I mean, we could really see a shift in the power dynamic in the world by countries that embrace Bitcoin.
Oh, believe me. I mean, and it's, you live in different parts of the world where the weather might not be so nice, and you just sit there and see the pictures of Bitcoin Beach, like, oh, well, like I could live there and work there, take my company there. It could really shift things.
Especially now as people are not tied to a physical location anymore, that they don't have to go into the office. And that's been something we've been talking to the tourism ministry in El Salvador about is, just week-long, visits and that stuff might be tough for the next year or two, but there's this huge open market for people who want to leave for 3 months a year and get out of a horrible winter and come down to a place like El Zante and work remotely. Or even for a permanent relocation that, why do I need to live in the US anymore where I can move and live on the beach at a much lower cost level and have this healthy lifestyle where I'm surfing in the morning, doing yoga at night, and, connected to everybody in the world during the day. Why live in the filth of San Francisco or the craziness of New York when you could be in a place like El Zonte.
I know. I mean, I I hear you 100% there because the winters. So like I'm in Pittsburgh, grew up in Pittsburgh, like always was okay with the winter. And then the more time I've spent in like LA and warmer climates over the winter from a business perspective, it really hit me a couple of years ago. We were in LA for a while and we came back and like I was freezing. Like I was more cold than I'd ever been before. And I'm notoriously like a person wearing shorts and it's snowing outside. And I was like freezing and it just and now I look at the wind in every winter, the last couple winters, I'm just looking at my wife like, yeah, you want to go somewhere real quick, for maybe like, I don't know, from January 2nd until Easter. Because, it looks nice down there. And I make the joke too that if everybody, like the settlers, they came in through New York, but if they had come in through a different port, our map would look very different because I think that like the people that settled in Pittsburgh, I love you. I love the people here and I love all the things, but the weather, I mean, they must have got here and settled in like May and been like, wow, this place is beautiful. And then they spent the whole summer building like a town. And then all of a sudden in like October, they're like, oh crap. Like this, I don't know if this is going to stay because if you got here in the winter, you wouldn't stay. But you're in San Diego and El Zonte, so you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, but it's still, I mean, it can still get a little chilly in San Diego in the winter. So that nice thing about El Zonte is it's always warm, it's always beach weather. And it's funny in El Zonte, you hear a bunch of French being spoken kind of all over the town because the French Canadians, I mean, there's a big group of them that's kind of moved in and they come every year. And so I always joke that I think Canadians only work like, 3 months a year because they get out during the winter. So it's we've already seen that happening. And I think with the changes in the work environment in the US, we're going to see that on a much wider scale. I think people are really underestimating the demographic kind of switch and movement that we're going to see over the next couple of years as this remote work thing kind of filters through everything.
Yeah, I've been wondering that for a long time. And you see even like, Anthony Pompliano moving from New York to Miami, for it's like, I don't even think he's really come out and said anything, but I'm sure being locked in, your high rise in New York for months and you're like, you know what? Hey, Miami, it's nicer weather. They're embracing Bitcoin. And my friend's dad, they live like half the year in Florida. And anytime I see him over the last year, I'm like, hey, how's it down there? And he's like, oh, it's great. I could actually go places, like I actually do stuff.
I think it's super exciting that Miami's kind of becoming the center of the Bitcoin space. And I think that has implications for Bitcoin in Latin America because most Latin American companies have their headquarters in Miami just because it's the most convenient place. So a lot of them don't even have any U.S. operations, but that's still where their U.S. headquarters are. So they jokingly refer to Miami as the capital city of Latin America. So I think with Bitcoin and that kind of connection, I think you're really going to see that growth in Latin America.
Yeah, that's going to be. I'm excited for that. Even I had an actor producer friend who, like right when the pandemic hit, before they shut down everything, him and his wife left and went to Acapulco. And like he called me and I was talking to him and I said, "Oh, how's LA?" And he was like, "Oh, we're in Acapulco." He's like, "If we're gonna be locked down, we're going somewhere like that." What's the pandemic been like down in El Zonte? I mean, I know I've seen people I'm sure wear masks and everything, but is there a big difference to how it's being handled in the U.S.?
There is. Initially, they had a very, very, very strong response. From my perspective, it was overboard. But everybody has their own opinions on that. But they shut down their borders before they had even a single case, and they had a pretty draconian lockdown for a number of months. But they did a better job of opening back up. They started opening back up in June, July, and it's kind of got progressively better. And so Yeah, especially in El Zonte. You hardly see any masks in El Zonte. I mean, everybody's kind of out and about. A lot of people did get COVID there, but we didn't have any deaths. I think just them
Oh, wow.
being out in the sun and being active and out and about. They just seemed to recover a lot better, where you saw a lot more deaths in the city where people were more locked inside. So it was interesting to kind of see the way it played out in the different locations. And it actually seemed to hit the wealthier people harder, I think, because they did lock down and they could afford to lock down and do all those things, which I think in the long term wound up being counterproductive. And so we've seen in El Zonte people kind of, you wouldn't really realize that the pandemic's going on anymore. But obviously they still try to use, protocols in the restaurants and stuff like that. The servers will be wearing masks, but you don't really see the guests or people walking around town wearing masks, and it's a pretty free environment right now.
And you're not like, the restaurants aren't at like 50% capacity, or they're just fully
No,
open?
but I mean, the one of the things there is all the restaurants are outside anyways, and so
Hmm.
you don't have that kind of concern of eating indoors, and the weather's so nice that you want to be outdoors, and so I think the environment and the climate just lends it to be in a better situation. And the people there are real survivors. They've been through hardships in the past, and I think the longer this has played out, they've realized, hey, this is just another, thing. It's not the end of the world. It's just another thing we have to kind of contend with. But life has to go on. We can't stop living. And so we've seen them just kind of really embrace continuing on with life.
That's awesome. I wanted to go there for many reasons, but now I'm just sitting there thinking about eating dinner with my feet in the sand, and you know. Um, what's the population of El Zonte?
So El Zonte has about 3,000 people. And it kind of swells on the weekends. It's about an hour outside the capital city. And so you get a lot of people that come to the beach just for the weekends. A lot of the homes in the community are owned by people who live in the capital city. They're kind of more vacation homes. And so it kind of is a little bit quieter during the week and then gets a little busier on the weekends, and then kind of their holiday weeks, which would be the week before Easter and around Christmas.
Hmm. And the weather, you said, is always nice. I mean, dead of winter, the summer, it doesn't get too hot, or is it?
It's perfect hammock weather. I'll say that. If you're out, digging in the yard or doing something like that, it can be a little warm. We use air conditioning, pretty
Hmm.
regularly, especially to sleep at night, because it doesn't really cool off too much at night. And so it's for some people it might be a little on the warm side, but I would definitely take that over cold.
Oh,
The
yeah.
best weather months are kind of the beginning of the dry season, which is from November through March. Kind of
Mhm.
March, April, May definitely get a little warm. I mean, it's still beautiful, but it gets a little warm. And then the rainy season starts in kind of May, June, and it can still be sunny during the day. You'll get rain for a couple hours in the afternoon or a few hours at night, but it's really not a bad time there.
And the water was a little warmer than, like, say, if you're going in like the Jersey Shore or something like that.
The water is perfect. It's between 80 and 85 degrees all year round. So it is
So
the
it's the
perfect water
perfect,
temperature
like,
for
where you can
sure.
just walk right in and it doesn't affect you, and you're just like, I'm good.
Exactly. Yeah. And, all those kind of ads you see for like perfume things or different things like that, where somebody's like sitting at the water's edge and like, the waves are just lapping up against them. I didn't think
Yeah.
that happened in real life. I thought that was just for the photo shoots. But in places like El Salvador, like that's what people do. They don't sit on a towel at the beach. They just kind of sit right on the edge because the water's so comfortable that you have this kind of warm water just kind of washing up and down, with the waves. And
Oh,
I mean, it's pretty surreal.
that's awesome. And so you guys just had a big surf tournament or surf competition, right?
Yeah, we were the sponsors for a big surf tournament that was held at Punta Roca, which is kind of one of the best waves in El Salvador. And it's probably about a 20-minute drive from El Zonte where we're at, but it's a big coastal city that we're expanding Bitcoin in. So now there's a number of businesses in La Libertad, which is the city, that are using Bitcoin. And so we sponsored that surf contest, but we also have become sponsors of the National Surf Federation. El Salvador has amazing waves and amazing surfing talent, but they haven't really had historically they haven't had the resources to kind of support their surfers and their surf team. And El Salvador actually landed the final Olympic qualifier for the Olympics this year. So at the first week of June, they're going to have that event. And so we have come alongside the National Surf Federation, and we're giving a stipend in Bitcoin to their 10 members monthly so that they can quit their other jobs and just kind of focus on training and hopefully qualify for the Olympics. We actually had a very sad thing that's kind of come out of that, and we're trying to turn it into a good thing. One of these very talented young ladies, her name was Catherine Diaz. The day we actually signed this accord and had set all this up to sponsor the Surf Federation for the next year, she was going out training that afternoon, and she was just out of the blue struck by lightning and killed. It was a freak event. It's not even the rainy season there. It was, just tragic beyond belief. It really just rocked, everybody in the beach community. But we're seeing the Bitcoin community kind of rally around that, and we're actually going to be making an announcement next week. I'm not sure when this will air, but we're doing a big Bitcoin related fundraiser to build a surf training center in her honor, just to kind of honor awesome. her legacy, but also to make sure that future surfers and current surfers in El Salvador have the opportunities to compete on the world stage that people other places do.
Yeah. And that was just like a freak accident, right? I know any lightning strike is, but is there like when there's lightning at the beach, do you have to get out of the water usually, or
I usually will, just because, you hear about lightning historically on lakes or anything like that, but I've never heard of anybody get hit by lightning surfing. I'm sure it's happened somewhere in history, but it's definitely not a common thing. And it was nothing anybody was expecting, that's for sure.
And she was going to be competing for the Olympic trials.
Yeah, she was going to be competing for the Olympic trials and was most probably going to be able to go on to the Olympics to represent El Salvador. So it was, just very tragic to see. 22 years old, just beautiful, amazingly talented, young woman who had amazing impact. Everybody who knew her just said she had amazing impact on those around her. And so we really want to honor her legacy.
Oh, that's great. I'll make sure to, time this so that it comes out after that.
Perfect.
But so you guys can announce it through your proper channels. But so surfing, did you know before you went there?
Yeah, that's actually how I wound up in El Salvador. I grew up surfing, and 16, 17 years ago, a buddy of mine were looking to go on a surf trip to Central America. And, I'd been to Nicaragua and I'd wanted to check out El Salvador. So we just kind of on a whim booked tickets and went for a couple weeks. And I was just kind of blown away. I've traveled quite a bit, especially when I was younger, before I had kids. I think I've been to like 45 countries at this point, and I'd never been to a place where I felt so kind of comfortable as I did in El Salvador. Usually when you go to places, either people are like always trying to sell you stuff, or you feel like you have to be on guard because they see you as a target. Or in other places, there can be even kind of like rude or standoffish. El Salvador was neither. People were warm. If you engaged them, they engaged you. They weren't trying to sell you stuff. They were just genuinely friendly. And it just felt like a place where, man, this is a place where I could live. And so I called my wife up and said, all right, we're coming back next month to buy a place here. So, get your mom to come babysit because we got to get back here and buy something up while it's still cheap.
And how did she handle that? Because I keep hinting at my wife. I'm like, we can move to the beach, we can move to the beach.
Well, initially we didn't, I didn't tell her we were going to move here. It was a
Yeah.
vacation home. So that, it's much easier to sell your wife on buying a beach vacation home than it is saying you're going to move to another country. So she was skeptical at first, but then once she came down, she fell in love with it too. And so it was kind
Yeah.
of a no-brainer. And yeah, it was a pretty easy sell to her.
And how do you split about 50-50 between San Diego and El Zonte, or is it mainly El Zonte?
It depending on the year, but yeah, that's historically how it's been. But this last year, it's been more, and kind of moving forward, it'll probably continue to be more and more. We have a seasonal business in the U.S., but our goal is to kind of move out of that and be more focused on the Bitcoin projects and other just opportunities in the Bitcoin space. And
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of where our heart is right now, and our love is for the community there. And so, we're trying to
Yeah.
put stuff in place to make that happen.
And there's plenty of education, right? Like for kids, because I mean, I have two young kids, so thinking about I think you said something about their schools like 45 minutes away or so in English speaking.
Yeah. So initially, we had our kids. There was kind of a local co-op school that there was a couple Canadian families, a couple families that were like mixed. The husband or wife was American and married to a Salvadoran. A couple Belgian families and a smattering of other Europeans, and so we kind of came together and formed kind of a co-op English speaking school in El Zonte. And so my kids would go there 2 to 3 days a week, and then we would homeschool them the other days, just kind of more in the core subjects. Great school, amazing people running it. We kind of joked, we called it the hippie school, because they would, they did gardening and theater and, kind of focused on those things. And so it was really great because our kids could go get those experiences. They were learning Spanish. And then we kind of still did the more core subjects in-house. More recently, as our kids have gotten older, my daughter, when she was a freshman, we enrolled her in the American school in the capital city. And it's been an amazing experience. I mean, it's an English-speaking college prep school. I mean, I'd put it up against any of the top prep schools in the U.S. I think 97% of their alumni went on to a 4-year university last year. Like, they have this amazing educational opportunities at a fraction of what we would pay in the U.S. And so it's a little bit of a drive. It's like 45 minutes for us to take them to school. But my son also started there this year. He's in 8th grade. And we've been super impressed. And so there's a number of opportunities like that. There's the American school, the British school. There's also a French and German school, and then an international school, and a couple other college prep English-speaking schools that have super high caliber education. And we just wanted to make sure for our kids growing up in El Salvador that they would still have the opportunities to go on to university if they chose to. And so we've kind of found a way to make that work.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Mike, I really appreciate you coming on, and I'm really blown away by what you're doing down in El Zonte, and it's just really inspiring to hear about, because I think this is what Satoshi really wanted, people argue over, payment system versus store of value. And I'm with you there on, like, I think it can be both. And ultimately I think this is what he wanted, is to help people get out of poverty and have hope and take the power from those few up at the top and give it to everybody.
No, I 100% agree. I mean, I think his vision and what Bitcoin is, it's like the best of it's like a better gold as a store of value, and it's a better dollar as a transactional daily use thing. And you put those both together. So why wouldn't you want to be transacting in something that's going to go up in value over time? And why wouldn't you want to hold all your wealth in something that's going to go up in value over time, but also that you can spend at a moment's notice, that you could send across the world without anybody having to give you permission or being able to block, that you could spend 25 cents of, which obviously you can't with gold or any other hard assets. So it really has the best of all worlds wrapped into one. And I think it's just silly that we're arguing about which aspect is better.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the people of El Zante will tell you that it doesn't matter which side you're on. It works for everybody. Well,
Definitely.
I'm gonna have to come down for sure, and check this place out. And where can people find you? It's just at Bitcoin Beach on Twitter.
Yeah, we're pretty active on Twitter at Bitcoin Beach. We also have a website. It's just www.bitcoinbeach.com. I'll admit I'm not the best at updating that, so some of the information there might be a little dated, but it does give you a good feel of the community there and our team members and all of that. Even though I'm the one who's usually giving interviews or the one that handles the Twitter account, I mean, 98% of what is happening is done by our team, not by me. I joke that they just allow me to hang out on Twitter. That's basically all I'm good for. They're really the ones picking the initiatives that we support. They're the ones figuring out how to make it work. They're the ones driving it forward and using Bitcoin, on a daily basis, even much more than I do. And so we hope when people come down that they'll get to know the team members there and be able to see this kind of grassroots impact effort that's happening. There's been some people say, oh, you have some foreigner that comes in and imposes his, idea on this. It's not that at all. Like I just was the connection point, and they have taken this and run with it. And it's really a Salvadoran effort, and it's endemically driven. And so that's what makes it so exciting.
That's awesome. And travel wise, for anyone that wants to go, is there like a quarantine period? How?
There's no quarantine period. You do have to get a COVID test within 3 days before arrival. Or I believe now they are, if you are somebody who's been vaccinated and you have proof of that, I believe that also suffices.
Okay.
So, there's a little bit of a hurdle, but it's really not that hard to do. And there's no quarantine period or anything like that. You can be on the beach and surfing, within an hour of landing at the airport.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thanks again, Mike, for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it was great hanging out with you.